Let's start with the numbers. According to the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime, or UNODC, approximately 70,000 hectares of opium poppy were cultivated in Afghanistan in 2002. Despite its illicit status and governmental eradication efforts, production gradually increased until reaching nearly 200,000 hectares in 2007. UNODC's 2010 report estimated production steady at 90,000 hectares. The US government and foreign experts have estimated the opium economy to be responsible for 30 to 60% of the total Afghan GDP. All of this has gone on despite the Afghan government and its international partners devoting billions of dollars in various efforts to fight opium production over the past decade. Why haven't they been successful in stopping farmers from growing opium? One reason, according to Paul Fishstein, agricultural expert and Harvard University Belfer Center fellow, is that agriculture in Afghanistan is very precarious.
Agriculture by its nature is a high-risk endeavor, and particularly in a physically and institutionally insecure environment like Afghanistan, there's a whole bunch of other risks on top of just the climate, and agronomic-related risks.
Opium poppy has numerous biological advantages in Afghanistan's dry climate. It grows well with little care and without irrigation. But, Fishstein says, the market itself helps further opium's comparative advantage by reducing risk.
The structure of the opium economy, in a way, takes away some of that risk. It's storable, it's not perishable, people will buy it at your farm gate, and, they cover the transport and all the, corruption-related expenses. So that's a way of minimizing risk.
Adam Payne, a rural development expert at the Afghanistan Research and Evaluation Unit, sums up the relationship between poor farmers and opium poppy.
It works for poor people in areas where markets are heavily fractured. You've got guaranteed purchase at the farm gate, you get credit. It's a relatively low-risk market in a high-risk environment. So there are those price incentives that are certainly there.
But farmers' decisions to grow is not the entire story. Once harvested, opium must be refined into heroin and transported to foreign markets. As Fishstein describes, who handles and profits from the heroin trafficking is no mystery.
Is opium helping to fund the insurgency? And does the insurgency facilitate the production and transport? Absolutely. There's no question about that. I don't think anyone would tell you there isn't a link.
Though opium is illegal, it is not without regulation. Gretchen Peters, investigative reporter with a decade of experience in Afghanistan, elaborates on the Taliban's almost governmental role in this illicit market.
The Taliban are actually quite successful at collecting all sorts of revenue, whether they are taxing poppy farmers, taxing labs that are processing opium into narcotics, taxing the shipments of drugs that are coming through their control zones. So the Taliban are actually quite efficient at collecting revenue within this economy. So it would be wrong to say that in some ways that the economy is unregulated.
While it is known that opium's profits support the insurgency, Fishstein says its exact impact is unknown.
Quantifying it is problematic. The opium economy is funding the insurgency. How much is it? What percentage? We don't really know. It could be, is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Is it 60%?
However, the insurgency's role in fostering the drug trade is the result of a lawlessness in opium-producing provinces and in Afghanistan as a whole. Peters describes this relationship.
Drug producers always gravitate to areas where there is a lack of governance, and this is probably the main driving factor is the fact that Afghanistan has a weak and corrupt government, and in fact the region is populated by weak and corrupt governments. This, to me, is the biggest challenge that the international community faces.
Joel Haffenstein, a former USAID contractor, remarks on how bribes within the Afghan National Police Force show complicity in drug trafficking.
There is a capped amount that you need to pay if you want to be appointed to be a district police chief. And you compare the amount that needs to be paid in a province or district that's a major opium trafficking route, even if it doesn't cultivate, to the amount that police have to pay to get put in their positions in other districts in the country. And there's no comparison. It's very clear that the only way to afford a police captaincy is to be taking rents from the opium traffic.
Peter suspects that the corruption goes even higher.
The problem goes right to the top. In fact, there have been dozens of cases where President Karzai has, or I should say, there have been dozens of cases where drug traffickers and officials involved in protecting the drug trade have actually gone through the Afghan court system, have been tried, convicted, sentenced, and President Karzai has turned around and pardoned them because they're political cronies.
But why is opium profitable in the first place? Payne argues that demand in the West for heroin is the ultimate driver of Afghanistan's opium economy.
It's a market driven by demand. The demand is in the West. Now, what other markets do we seek to address by controlling the supply rather than the demand side? So that's that fundamental driver, and the fact that it's illegal, of course, induces the price incentive because illegal markets operate in the shadows, they create profits and so forth.
And a demand will always find a supply. For the time being, Payne states, Afghanistan is the supply.
Now, if they succeed in closing it down in Afghanistan, it'll be pushed somewhere else. It won't disappear. But the market exists, and it's the demand side and the way in which the market is structured that is the key issue that drives it. Then if you add on top of that the issues of insecurity, the lack of alternatives, people, in a sense, trapped in a rural economy where there are very few other options, the conditions for them to move out of opium and to move out of the agrarian economy simply do not exist.
The international demand for heroin, the biological advantages of poppies, and the domestic political instability make Afghanistan the perfect place for growing opium. With an estimated 30 to 60% share of the total GDP, the opium economy in Afghanistan will continue unless there is effective intervention. Next week, I'll examine different counter-narcotics efforts. For War News Radio, I'm Alan Zhao.